One thing that has always really bugged me about Knights of the Old Republic, and the Old Republic in general, is the Rakata. And that is because to me, they make absolutely no sense. Now, I want to be very clear that I love Rakatan history and Rakatan lore. It's honestly one of my favourite things about Star Wars and the entire Old Republic era. I just love this huge and completely depraved empire of Force-sensitive, warmongering creatures that enslaved entire planets, created new species, and created some of the most grandest technological marvels to ever exist. But that doesn't change the fact that Star Wars most of the time just does not know what it's doing with the Infinite Empire, especially in terms of lore, and that their rise to power and their general impact on the universe is mired by constant inconsistencies. Now, one thing that I do get is that it is very hard to create a writing foundation for creatures that should essentially be the most powerful things in the universe. Not only is every single one of them teeming with the Force, they are unrivaled geniuses of technology, so of course they have to have a crux, they have to have a flaw, and that is the disease that they contract, which essentially cuts off their ability to utilize the Force, and in turn utilize their technology that utilizes the Force. But this is where things start to lose consistency, and it's where it begins to stop making sense. In case you're unaware, the Rakatans were given advanced technology by a race known as the Qua. However, the Rakatans being the way they were, they turned on the Qua due to a desire to conquer and destroy using the dark side, and one thing that they desperately wanted was something known as an Infinity Gate. An Infinity Gate was teleportation technology. It could move things incredible distances in an instant, and the Qua actually built an Infinity Gate on Rakata Prime before the Rakatans turned on them. This then led to a massive war on Rakata Prime between the Qua and the Rakatans, where many Qua were killed, but in doing this they managed to destroy the Infinity Gate and deny the Rakatans access to their technology. The Qua, then knowing the threat of the Rakata, basically rendered all of their Infinity Gates across the galaxy unusable. So, the Rakatans needed a new way of travelling to branch out and to conquer. So, what did they do? They built this massive, self-sustaining station above their system's star. It's quite an obscure thing in Star Wars, you've probably never heard of it, but it was known as the Star Forge, which is quite singularly the most unique piece of technology, and possibly the most powerful bit of technology ever to exist in the Star Wars universe. Using the Starforge, they began to build an endless supply of warships, fleets, and conquest-driven weapons, so they could extend out and begin the reign of the Infinite Empire. They then created the first known hyperdrives. In Star Wars, the Rakatans are basically credited with being the first species to fully utilize hyperdrive travel, but there was supposedly a flaw in the design of these hyperdrives. The hyperdrives could only be used when channeled with the dark side of the Force. Now, as they begin to branch out and they begin to create the Infinite Empire, at the apex of their power, they managed to conquer 500 planets. You heard me right. 500. Darth Sidious's galactic empire had over 1.5 million. Are you starting to see why they don't make sense? Supposedly, their empire was so small because they couldn't travel to these other planets. They didn't have access to the hyperdrive technology that would allow them to travel to planets that weren't rich with the Force. But in comes everybody's favourite MMO, the Old Republic, and the planet Belsavis. Belsavis is a planet in the Old Republic that is essentially a prison. The Rakatans cracked open an entire planet and locked away a Force god inside of it to stop it consuming the galaxy. They then continued to use Belsavis as like a super prison, which was known as the Tomb, and inside of the Tomb they held some of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. And while I said earlier that this is where things might start to get inconsistent, this is really where things stop making sense. Inside the Tomb is a very special place known as the Eternity Vault. And this prison was designed to house a Rakatan warlord known as Soa. Soa was essentially a renegade. He broke off from the Infinite Empire and went on his own. He dominated the Sith on Korriban, he used darkside alchemy to create some of the most devastating creatures imaginable, and he was regarded as one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. His power was so phenomenal that the Rakatans, using their entire empire, could not kill him. And much like the Force God that they locked inside of the planet, they locked Soa away in a form of stasis for eternity, hence the name Eternity Vault. The Rakatans then left behind nuggets of information to describe the Infinite Empire's bringing down of this monster, and in their description, they said that Soa alone had conquered 1,000 worlds, but the Infinite Empire, at its apex of power, could only conquer 500. Now you're telling me this makes sense. A renegade of the Infinite Empire conquered double the amount of planets than the Infinite Empire, and was then imprisoned by the Infinite Empire, who managed to beat him. And that's just Soa. Trust me, there's more. Also locked away on this planet were a species known as the Eshkar, or at least the surviving members of it. The Eshkar were considered to be one of the most feared species in the known galaxy. And the Eshkar, who didn't have access to hyperdrive technology in the same way that the Rakatans did, managed to conquer half the galaxy. This is legitimately the law in the Old Republic. Now, the Eshkar branched so far out that they actually began to infringe on the Infinite Empire's planetary property. This then led to a massive galactic war between the Infinite Empire and the Eshkar, which had supposedly engulfed the entire galaxy. Now, keep in mind, the Eshkar had dominated half of the galaxy. The Infinite Empire controlled 500 planets. They then had a war that spanned the entire galaxy, and the Infinite Empire won. The Eshkar had to have travel technology that allowed them to jump from planet to planet that wasn't supposedly limited by the Force, like the Rakatan hyperdrives. And they must have controlled, 500,000 planets? But this is the Old Republic, so let's give them the benefit of the doubt. So let's say at this point in time, only 10% of the planets in the galaxy had been discovered, in comparison to Darth Sidious's empire, so that would still be 150,000 planets. The Infinite Empire controlled 500, and the Eshkar lost the war. So, once again, I'm asking the question of you. Are you starting to see how the Rakatan Infinite Empire make no sense? But wait, there's more. Locked away in the lower levels of the tomb was an incredibly powerful piece of technology that was essentially a power core, and this power core had the capability to create a hyperspace ripple that would have destroyed the entire star system. So the Rakatans had power cores that had the power capability to utilize hyperspace in the form of a weapon, but they didn't have the technological capability to use hyperspace travel without it being intrinsically connected to the dark side. And you know I'm gonna say it again, that isn't it. Remember I spoke a little bit earlier about how the Rakatans desperately wanted access to the Quas Infinity Gate technology, aka teleportation, but they couldn't gain access to it because the Qua destroyed all of their Infinity Gates, so they ended up having to create hyperdrive technology which was limited by the Force. Well, across the entirety of the tomb on Belsavis, there were teleportation pads, which allowed people to teleport from one side of the planet to the other. So they did manage to develop teleportation technology. But let's run this back a little bit and let's summarize. The species that had the technological capability to glass entire planets, to terraform entire planets, to create brand new species from scratch, manipulate the Force on a level that was never seen again, to create a machine that lasted for 20,000 years on its own, that had the ability to create material from nothing and turn that into an endless war machine, at the height of their power only managed to conquer 500 worlds due to the extremely limited nature of their hyperdrive technology. But despite their limited hyperdrive technology, they had the technological capability to crack open an entire planet, lock away a Force god who was the equivalent of the Celestials, imprison one of their own who had conquered double the amount of planets that their empire had done with the same technology, and then they go on to fight a galactic war against a species that conquered half of the known galaxy, which as we mentioned could be 100,000 planets at least, beat them and reduce their entire species to just under 100,000, and then locked that species away on a super prison. And then on that super prison, they created teleportation technology, which by the time of Luke Skywalker was still considered to be a myth because of how advanced it was, but they still only had 500 planets at the height of their power because of the limit of their hyperdrive technology. The Rakatan Infinite Empire make no sense. The inconsistencies of this species is ridiculous, from in-universe lore to encyclopedias to atlases. None of it makes sense. When it comes to discussions about the Rakata, I am always hearing this idea that in reality they were really kinda weak because they had limited hyperdrive technology and they only managed to conquer around 500 worlds. People always say, well, Palpatine's empire could beat them, the Sith Empire could beat them, the Republic could beat them, but if we actually look at it from the in-universe lore that's provided, nobody could beat them. The Infinite Empire was on a technological level that was never matched again in the Star Wars universe, and I personally believe that we have to ignore this idea that they had limited hyperdrive technology and that they only controlled 500 planets. I truly believe that, simply based on all of the information I have given you, that the Infinite Empire is single-handedly the most devastating group of beings in Star Wars, but they're also treated the most terribly by its writers. I really want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the Rakatan Infinite Empire. Are you a big fan of them? Are you not a big fan of them? Let me know, because I love the Rakatans, and honestly, I'm so happy that I could finally make a video about them. And I'm really excited to hear all of your opinions on them, because honestly, I love them so much, and I really kind of hope that other people love them as much as I do, because they're so cool. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button to tell YouTube that you had a fantastic time with this video. It helps me out so much. And also, if you love Knights of the Old Republic, perhaps consider subscribing to join the biggest growing Knights of the Old Republic community on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.